Neighboring New Hampshire, once again the focus of national politics this week as we watch the first presidential primary of the 2024 presidential cycle unfold. In the end, producing a second consecutive victory for former President Donald Trump. Former South Carolina Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley called it, though, a great night and vowed to fight on.
Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. It's not over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over.
We have to do what's good for our party. And she was up and I said, wow, she's doing like a speech like she won. She didn't win, she lost.
When the returns were in, it was clear Trump performed better than he did in the 2016 primary in nearly every New Hampshire community. NBC5's Jack Thurston was on the ground once again in New Hampshire on Tuesday and joins us now. Jack, did this year seem different?
Well, it's always, of course, a big event, Stu, with political journalists from around the nation and even the world all watching New Hampshire's role in winnowing the field, or at least helping candidates sharpen their message. So this year in that regard was no different, even with only two major candidates on the Republican side and the incumbent president relying on a write-in campaign because of that dispute with the Democratic National Committee over New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation status. At polling places like in Lebanon, we heard from voters motivated by border security and the drug overdose crisis, others who gave inflation and the cost of living as top concerns, and some who made decisions based on their belief that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are simply too old for the job.
Mainly the way this country is going, downhill. It's the border, our financial, everything. I mean, somebody's got to get a handle on this.
We know pretty much what we'll get with Biden. We have a pretty good idea what we'll get with Trump. And I don't want either of those. So it was pick one of the younger candidates, which I did.
And an interesting story out of Hanover, where so many undeclared voters, people who are not registered with a specific party, were expected to pick Republican ballots. The town had to get extra ballots from the Secretary of State, and good thing Hanover did, because those ballots went quickly. Nikki Haley soundly defeated Donald Trump in the more liberal college town, Stu. That was probably a statement more against Trump than in favor of Haley.
Yeah, Haley's strength in the Upper Valley. Jack Thurston, thank you very, very much. Now, veteran political analyst Linda Fowler joins us with her take from Dartmouth. Joining us now from Hanover, New Hampshire, Professor Linda Fowler at Dartmouth College. Welcome to NBC5.
Well, it's good to be with you again.
Well, it's nice to see you again. We do this every 4 years, it seems, but this was an unusual New Hampshire primary, wasn't it?
In almost every way. It was unusual that the incumbent president was not on the ballot. It was unusual that the winnowing took place before Election Day, so that we only had two candidates on the Republican side instead of 6 or 8. It was unusual in the extent to which there wasn't almost no bumper stickers, yard signs, things like that. It was seemed like a very quiet campaign as well.
Which is so unusual for, the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 primaries. How closely did polling, predict the actual vote result?
Well, the pollsters picked up the surge that Haley had, because she was at about 13% when starting in early January, and she ended up with 45% of the vote. So somewhere in there, but the pollsters going into the weekend before the election had her much farther behind Trump than was actually the case. They had her somewhere between 15 and 20 points down, and in fact, she was down by 11.
Looks like 11. Unaffiliated voters, what I guess I can call them independents, but they're neither registered Republicans or Democrats. How they can participate in the Republican primary, and it appears they did in big numbers. It looks like record turnout. What effect do you think they had?
Well, it's the reason why people thought Haley would have such a good shot at doing well in New Hampshire, because the undeclared voters can go into the polling place on Election Day and say, for the purposes of today, I want to be a Republican or I want to be a Democrat. And it's quite common when there's only one contested primary, as was the case this year, that undeclared voters will choose to vote in the primary that's more interesting. The question with them always is, will they show up at all? Because they're less likely than declared partisans to vote in primaries. And this year they did show up in significant numbers, and it looks like they were engaging in protest of the choices they have on the ballot. They didn't want to do a write-in for Biden, and they didn't want to cast a ballot for Trump. It's the case that New Hampshire voters have often rejected the front runner. Bob Dole in '96, Donald Trump won the primary in 2016, but John Kasich almost beat him, another seemingly moderate Republican. And and there's a sense in which New Hampshire voters say, we look at the candidates as individuals. We're not going to be dictated to by the press or the people in Iowa. We're going to make up our own minds. But in this case, the polls were sort of right.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot going on in a couple of days leading up to the New Hampshire primary, with endorsements, with former rivals backing Trump. Trump did say on primary night that, well, New Hampshire lets Democrats vote in the primary, and that's the only reason Haley did as well. That's not exactly true, is it?
No, a lot of undeclared voters are actually lean Republican, and that's why we end up with so many Republican governors, even though our congressional delegation is more likely to be Democratic. So it's actually not accurate to say that. But what is the case is, I think Haley might have done a bit better, even a bit better among undeclared voters, but many of them are women, and they're also pro-choice. And Haley's anti-abortion stance was problematic for some, at least.
You don't think she is now, in the aftermath of New Hampshire, getting quite the credit she deserves for challenging Trump and coming up 10, 11 points short?
Well, with all the primaries I've looked at going back to 1996, I haven't seen very many who've made such a rapid, quick increase. She went from 13% to, as I say, 45% in about 2.5 weeks, and that was really unusual.
She had the full-throated endorsement from the state's popular governor, the Sununu dynasty, actually, the governor's dad and brother.
Former senator. Yeah.
Right. What effect does that have, do you think?
Well, political scientists disagree on whether endorsements matter or not. I think in this case, it did matter quite a bit because it gave her name recognition. Remember, she hasn't been in public life in a while. People wouldn't have heard about a South Carolina governor. And so where the Sununus were most helpful to her was in just getting voters to pay attention to her. For
all of Haley's surge, Donald Trump still won in the overwhelming majority of towns in the state. Have you, as a longtime analyst, ever seen the kind of bond that a candidate has with his or her base voter, like we see in Donald Trump? I saw it once with John McCain in 2000 with college students. I've never been to a rally like the one we had at Dartmouth one night with John McCain and the students. It was like a rock concert. But that's about the only time I've seen that. Finally, on the Democratic side, we've had a number of questions about Why is it that the incumbent president, Joe Biden, is not on the Democratic primary ballot in New Hampshire? There was instead a write-in Biden campaign. What's the short answer?
Another weird thing about New Hampshire, well, we're the only state that has a law that requires that our primary be the first one. And the Republicans were asked by the Democrats in the state to change the date to go a week after South Carolina, which is what the DNC had requested. And the Republican legislature and the Republican governor said, no, we have a law for a reason. We value our place as first in the nation, and that's too bad. And at that point, the DNC said, well, if anybody runs, they're not going to get any delegates at the convention. So, and Biden, who was the person who was indebted to South Carolina for his nomination in 2020, was really stuck. So he said he wouldn't put his name on the ballot. Then I think local people who were angry about that, you might not be surprised that they were angry, began to worry that Dean Phillips, even though he was unknown, congressman from Minnesota, might make Biden look bad by doing better than he should have. So there was quite a significant grassroots operation in the state. And some Democrat, maybe the DNC, put some money behind it in the last week with mailers and advertising. So Biden's write-in was quite respectable, and he wasn't embarrassed. And that was primarily what people were worried about.
A primary to remember, and our thanks, as ever, to...
Oh, it's good to be with you. Take care.
Government Professor Emerita at Dartmouth, Linda Fowler. Thanks for being with us.
Sure. Bye now.